Welcome, Jocelyn. I'm so excited to have you here on the Soul Aligned Self-Care podcast. How are you doing today?
I am good. Very good. I actually did my whole self-care routine this morning already.
Wonderful. Well, I
Yeah.
stand behind that
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So, if to get started, if you could just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, yeah. I do a lot of things. I just recently did a post about being a jack of all trades,
Hmm.
master of none, and feeling bad about that my whole life.
Oh,
And then I saw the rest of the quote, and that
mhm.
it actually the quote is about William Shakespeare. It's jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than master of one. It's actually about William Shakespeare and how he used to do his stuff. I have like
Cool.
in his pocket, he had all his characters and all these things he researched for things. And then when he was ready to do a play, he'd just go in and take them out, right? Like,
I love that. I never heard the
yeah,
rest of that either, and so I like that because I'm
they keep
I'm
from
kind
us.
of like that too. Like I totally think that you should go after whatever it is, whether it's related or not, and you should really just whatever your heart is drawing you to, that you should pursue it, you know?
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah. So I do a lot of things.
Yeah.
I was for a very long time an expressive art therapist, intermodal. And then I had
Cool.
kids and I took off from that because I was working with sexual trauma and I was working with brain injury.
Okay.
And so I took off from that because I had kids and I was like, you can't cross the street, you can't climb a tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like nothing, you'll never date. Like that was like where I was at, and they were like 4. So
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
yeah. So I took a break knowing that it was affecting me and I just wanted to be a mom. And but I never really took a break because then I became a teaching artist and I taught about creativity. I was a teaching artist for many, many years. Um, and I still am actually, but that's what I ended up doing for a while was teaching art, teaching creativity
Hmm.
and musical theater and
Oh, cool.
kind of the mixture of all of that. And then just, about two, and I kind of carried that through. And I've always been a bit of a spiritual person. My mom was an aromatherapist and Feldenkrais practitioner, and she channeled angels. And so I grew up with that, very
Hmm.
holistic. And so I always had that piece of me. But in September of 2021, my parents died 7 days apart out of nowhere. And we were living with
I'm
them.
so sorry. That's horrible.
Yeah, it was really it was like knock everything out from under my feet. Like it was like,
Hmm.
wow. But we had 3 kids and we were all in the house with them. So everybody was super, super duper affected. And so I took like 4 or 5 months off and then I just started following my mom's breadcrumbs. And she sent me to human design. She sent me to the Akashic Records, and I started like working on all these things. So now I'm a Akashic Records guide and a human design coach. And also kind of in there, my grief took like a deep dive into the ocean.
Hmm.
And I couldn't sleep and I became very anxious. And because my parents died out of nowhere, and every time my kids got a sniffle, I was like, they're going to die. Like, I don't know what to do. And I wouldn't be able to sleep. I couldn't take my eyes off them. I got in this place. And it's funny how grief does that. It's like you're fine 1 minute and then all of a sudden it's like, boom,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
came the winter season.
Hmm.
So I found Yoga Nidra on my own. And Yoga Nidra is something that absolutely gave me my life back because when you're not sleeping, when you're in like fight or flight all the time and your anxiety is up to the highest degree all the time, like you can't function. It's or you can function, but you're functioning with high cortisol levels. You're functioning in this like, this kind of anxiety. And I always feel like it's like my energy goes like this when I'm in anxiety, right? It's like, ah. So I actually ended up getting trained as a yoga nidra guide, and not for me necessarily to do this for others to get paid for it, to offer it to people because it is just a wonderful, wonderful way to balance everything, just come back. Anyone who wants to work on any trauma, because I was really running deeply into grief. I went head first into it to work on it and heal it once I came out of like dissociation.
Hmm.
And if I didn't have the tools of yoga nidra to begin to get some sleep and to breathe and to like settle,
Hmm.
I could have easily gone off a cliff. Like I
Yeah.
could have easily. So I got trained to do that. And I'm currently in my third level certification of soul art, working toward being a soul art shaman. So
Cool.
soul art is this like creativity, speaking with the inner wisdom of your soul. So that was like a really long.
No, I mean, it's very, I like to hear about the journey, which is I think really
Yeah.
important to, and that's where you were following your, you know, your true calling, because you were like taking yourself from through all these different steps to help yourself heal. And now
Yeah.
you're helping other people heal, which I think is so beautiful. So, a question about the Yoga Nidra. When you get is it a certification? Do you have to be a yoga teacher to do Yoga Nidra, or is it something different
A
completely?
lot. There are some really intense yoga teacher certifications that include Yoga Nidra, but I
Mm,
went through just a Yoga Nidra deep transformative sleep teacher certification.
cool.
Um, because, well, first of all, a lot of people don't even understand that Yoga Nidra is like effortless. They're like, oh, I got to move and stretch and I got to do
Hmm.
all this. But I'm like, oh, no, no, put some pillows down, like support your knees, your neck.
Yeah.
And it's really it's guided meditation.
Hmm.
And so it's as effortless as it could get. So that's the first thing. But when someone is guiding someone through yoga nidras, and especially you want to be certified because especially when you're walking someone like through something like grief, you're tapping into the basically a yoga nidra goes through koshas or subtle selves, and
Hmm.
you're diving deeper into each of those subtle selves. And one of those subtle selves is the Manomaya kosha. And Manomaya kosha is the mental emotional. And so if you're going into grief with somebody and you're walking them through it, you're kind of bringing them in and out of like maybe love and grief, joy, sadness. You're maybe bringing them in between those stages. And you want to understand the process and how to bring someone through that to the next kosha. Like, so
Yeah.
there's a lot to it. It's not just like a meditation or a guided visualization. You're actually slowly diving into these subtle selves, getting to a state of bliss. So yeah,
Very
there is a
interesting.
certification program,
Yeah,
but
I
a lot of
did.
people do it.
I had no idea. I really didn't know that. And I love how I learn something new every day. And I think I told you that I haven't really tried it yet. And so I saw that you were on the schedule today and I'm like, ooh, today's the day. And so I'm going to try it tonight, like as my like wind down routine. Just to see what it's like and then maybe move into that. I'm very attracted to it. So I think it's something that I want to learn more about. So do you do this? Do you create recordings? Do you work one-on-one with people? Do you work in groups? How do you do this
Well,
practice?
I have an Insight Timer profile because I really like to put them out for free. Like
Yeah.
I am a fan because, there's not everyone's voice is for everyone. Not everyone's vibration is for everyone. I mean, my teacher,
Mhm.
Ali Boothroyd, is like, she pushed me, she brought me there, like just with her voice, right? But when
Yeah.
I went to other yoga nidra like guidance, I was like, oh, doesn't feel the same, right? So
Hmm.
that's why I think it's important to have a lot of people guiding them. And so I like to offer it. And I offer it with a little bit more of a poetic sense to it.
Hmm.
Um, so I have an Insight Timer account. And then I also I'm going to be doing more. I've just started understanding. So I put a bunch up and I just started understanding Logic Pro. Have you ever looked at Logic Pro?
No, what is
Uh,
that?
for a total artist? Like it's like a sound, program, like to
Okay.
create sounds. But I am an artist, but I don't understand all of these like technicalities.
Yes. Yeah.
So I have people walking me through to do it really good now.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
that's very interesting. I create meditations. I'm on Insight Timer also, and I create meditations, and I do the same thing on Aura. So I'm familiar with the platform, and I do like creating the free ones for Insight Timer. I
Yeah.
feel like you have to. I don't know. I love doing it, and I feel like it's a good way to connect with people also, and to learn because there is a certain feel you get with different teachers. You know, like there's certain meditations that I like to listen to, you know? And so, and I share a lot of yoga nidra with my clients. My clients love it.
Yeah.
And they'll give me feedback. Oh, I like her voice. I don't like him or whatever, like, so I'm like, okay, this is so interesting.
Yeah, you have to have that mixture, right? Or that
Yeah.
opportunity to choose what you're called toward.
Yes, you have to find what's right for each person, and it's not something that I can decide. So I always tell my clients, if you like this, let me know so that I know exactly who you like to listen to, and I could, send more of these to you. So
Yeah.
I find it very interesting. So um going I'm when you talked about moving the person through these different stages, so when you create a meditation, you're essentially like writing poetry, right? Kind of.
So what's really cool, and I tend to do full yoga nidras. So if
Okay.
you go on to Insight Timer, you can, and I'm thinking of doing like snippet pieces. Like I've done Sankalpa, which is your heart's intention or your heart's
Hmm.
desire. I've done that as a yoga nidra, and I've also done one that's basically in what's called a rotation of consciousness, which is working with one of the koshas.
Hmm.
But for the most part, mine are long, and they go about 35 minutes,
Okay.
sometimes 40, because I'm
Okay.
walking through every stage. Um, and so it is I often do transmission, which is like I know where I'm going, and then I just go in the room without any script and I use my mic.
Hmm.
Um, but I have kind of worked out, okay, what's my image for this or what's right.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's really settled in the beginning, you're just breathing, and then you're going through what's called a rotation of consciousness. And that's the first kosha, right? And it's called the Annamaya kosha. And that one is the physical body. And this is what actually brought me into yoga and nidra to begin with. I had so much tension and anxiety.
Hmm.
Um, and a rotation of consciousness is simply being guided from place to place in the body to place your attention in different ways. And sometimes it's, just place your attention. Sometimes it's like recently I had one where it's like almost like a drop and it ripples out or the warmth comes out in that area. And it's kind of fast. You're not thinking, what if you stay on something, you ask someone who's meditating to like stay awareness for a long time, they start thinking.
Yeah.
You don't want them thinking. So it's pretty fast and you go really intense. Like it might be like inside of the right cheek, roof of the mouth, tip of the
Hmm.
tongue, right nostril, right? And a little slower than that, but it'll go really through everything in the body. And as you place your attention there, it's like something happens.
Hmm.
It just really relaxes. It's amazing. And when
Yeah.
you go through a rotation of consciousness, once then you go into the next kosha. But once you get through the rotation of consciousness, I feel like I am already like, I'm ready. Just,
Yeah.
you know, cover me up. Let me go to sleep.
Yeah. Nice. I love that.
Yeah. So that one's not very like poetic, right? That's like kind of, well, how you decide to bring the
Hmm.
attention there, but you're really just going through and you're deciding, do I want to go right to left? Do I want to go top to bottom? Do I want to go like in a U? How do I want to use the energy centers, right? As a
Hmm.
yoga nidra guide. And then after that, you go to pranamaya kosha, which is the breathing. So there's in breathing in yoga nidra, it's really about allowing your body to breathe you. It's not about forcing it or anything like that, and moving the breath through the body. And so that's kind of, I really enjoy guiding that session, that part of the session a lot. And then, yeah, and then you move to this mental emotional
Okay.
Manamaya kosha. And that one is really about opposites, about feeling into the physical feelings like of maybe constriction and expansion, or the emotional feelings of like love and grief, right? And really allowing, and then at the end of that kosha, when you're in the yoga nidra, you're trying to feel them together. Can we feel them together in our body? Can you feel
Interesting.
both the love and the grief? And it's teaching and you're in your subtle self. So you're really like basically training and learning, right?
Hmm.
Through that whole piece. And then the most poetic part is you go into this place of witnessing, and that is guided through story or image. And so that piece is really poetic to me. And I like to go for it with that piece. The
Hmm.
symbolism, the colors, the shapes, the story, the imagery that you bring to it.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
could see how your art background could really like move into that, your creative background. So it's
yeah.
really, I could see how that could be so aligned with what you're doing. That's really cool. Thank you for explaining all that. So it's like, I love digging into these different healing modalities because you think you know what it is. Like I
Right?
think I know what it is. I'm sending these to my clients because I know it helps them, but I had no idea. No idea what it was,
Yeah.
and it kind of makes sense now when I'm thinking of some of the titles of some of the Yoga Nidra's recordings that I've sent to them. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense now. And so, thank you for explaining that so detailed. That was very helpful.
And honestly, when you're doing a yoga nidra, you don't have to know all that. You're just like, you're literally just
Yeah, you're
laying
just,
there, get there effortlessly and just
yeah,
listen,
yeah, it's the guidance. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
So, how I'm very interested in the Akashic records. Like that's
Oh,
something I know we didn't. I didn't necessarily show interest in that at first, but I've always been very interested in that. Because can you explain how you work with people with the Akashic records?
yeah. So the Akashic records are, it's like a dimension of knowledge.
Hmm.
And the reason I got into that originally was I went to a workshop that they walked us through to meet your own Akashic records, and
Hmm.
everybody has their own. You can always enter your own. It's just a matter of learning how. And I ended up in a past life, and I was like, what is this? And I felt it was so. I mean, it was like, and I was really deep in grief at the time, and it was so grieving. Like it was like the loss of a set of twins. It was like in the 60s. It was like everything was living around me. It was
Wow.
really, I didn't understand what was happening. I almost got lost in it. So I went to my Akashic Records teacher, and she's like, you need to be trained. She's like, you're going to do this. And so I was like, okay, just teach me how to do, like, it was really strange, like experience for me to be in a past life like that.
Hmm.
And so the Akashic records are really a dimension of knowledge. They every living thing, every living being has an Akashic record. And it's like as human beings, from the minute our soul is born, and it records everything, every thought, action, choice, right? Feeling across our lifetimes. And
Okay.
so when you go into somebody's Akashic records, then you're going into their soul's knowledge from, and when you're in the Akashic records, you have to kind of think of time differently. Instead of being on a timeline like left to right or right to left, you got to think of it more of like a crystal ball. So
Hmm.
you can access your future self, you can access your past self. But you just don't, you're not, because it's all like this, everything can change. So it doesn't really tell the future. It's just
Hmm.
you use the Akashic records to understand, to see where patterns, beliefs come from, to understand. Going back to Yoga Nidra, they talk about samskaras, which is
Hmm.
like, have you heard of samskaras?
No.
It's like karma, but not
Hmm.
like in the pagan or Catholic sense.
Hmm.
It's like a samskara is like karma, where you've just kind of put a lot of energy in one direction. You've sent a
Hmm.
lot of water down that river, and the riverbed has gotten nice and deep, right? So we go
Hmm.
that direction. Um, and that's like a samskara. And you could have been putting your energy toward something that is hurting you, right? So you
Yeah.
have to kind of change that samskara. You need to dry that one up, maybe start sending your energy in a different direction. So you can work with that in the Akashic records even. And
Very
you can go
interesting.
into, yeah, you can go into Akashic records of relationships. You can go in the Akashic records of events, businesses. I've been going into a lot of people's businesses lately to feel the energy of the business, to make sure that people are matching up to the energy of their business. So I was just in someone's records the other day, and in their business record, and I was like, oh, you can't market this with words like work or coach. You have to market it with comfort, like, because
Yeah.
that's the energy of your business. If you market it, you're going to bring people in that aren't looking for that. So it's
Hmm.
kind of like matching so you could do all kinds of stuff in the Akashic records.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting and fun. Yeah, because from what I understand, all time is existing all at the same time. Everything's happening all at the same time. So
Yeah.
you have access to everything. And so that's really, really cool. I think that would be fun. So
One of my
moving forward with all
Well,
of your,
just quickly though, one of
okay.
my favorite things in the Akashic records is working with, you can meet your spirit teams and your ancestors and your, mentors, masters, ascending masters, but you can also get in, when you're in your, this is just for someone who wants to go experience, like maybe finding a meditation to go into your Akashic records.
Hmm.
It's very healing just to be in them. It heals something just to be, when I am in other people's Akashic records, it heals me as well. There's like just this beautiful energy healing that happens in them. So
Hmm.
if anyone wants to go, that is also another piece of that just before you've gone. I wanted to.
Oh, okay. So you could take someone into their Akashic records and with a meditation, I assume, kind of.
Yeah, people do it all different ways,
Yeah.
meditation, visualization.
Hmm. And then they could receive healing just from that, just from
Yeah,
being there. That's
yeah.
very interesting. Okay,
Mhm.
that's cool. So
Yeah.
I'm like seeing how this all comes together. So like then we could talk about human design, which I have a little bit of experience with that. And I find human design to be so on point. Like
Oh, yes.
I find that it's
Yes.
so interesting. Every time I learn more about it, I'm like, wow,
You're
like,
like, how did you know me? That's how I feel
yes,
with human design.
yeah, that's exactly. I was like, oh, how interesting. So tell me how you moved into that and how you use that with
Oh,
your
I've been
clients.
into human design for a very long time. I don't know how I think I originally got into it as a parent because I was like, why is my child so crazy? Like astrology wasn't giving me the answer, but it felt like a little bit of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, something's there, but it's not quite meeting. And human design takes into account chakra system, Vedic astrology, uh, the Kabbalah, the tree of life,
Mm-hmm.
numerology, like it kind of brings them all together. And so I was originally looking for how to parent my child.
Yeah. No, I think that's
You
I
know?
loved looking up my kids' human design. I'm like, yep, yep, you know.
Yeah. Oh, it helps. It helps with kids because if I didn't know my one child is a manifestor, and if I didn't know that, I would be like kicking her out of the house, like,
Yeah.
ah. But
Yeah,
that's
it's
how I originally found it, like probably around 2008, 2009. And then
wow.
I'd kind of dropped it for a little while. My mom picked it up, and that's how I found it with my mom again. Because
Okay.
I mean, I had been working my human design, but I wasn't looking to go deeper at that time. But
Mm-hmm.
once my mom died, I went into her emails, and every day she got an email from Karen Curry Parker. And I was like, okay, I'm going to reach out to her. I had no money because everything was up in like this in, they get put in the, when people die, they get put in the estate. And and so I said, Karen, I need to take your healing the witch wound class in human design. And I have no money. She's like, okay. So it kind of gave me this path, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to jump in. It was around the moon cycles and learning your human design. And Karen Curry Parker does a bunch of quantum healing alignment with it, which is EFT along with
Okay.
it. It's an awesome I was not trained by her, but I've experienced a lot of her work.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, went to work with Emma Dunwoody from Australia, who I love,
Mm-hmm.
and just really got into this. I started to learn more, and because my parents had died, I learned their charts. I never bothered. So
I
sad.
haven't
I never
done that
bothered
either.
to learn their charts.
Yeah.
And my dad was what's called a quad right in human design, which I am a quad right. And I don't know any other quad rights. And we are very interesting beings. Like we're very receptive and very different than most people.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, more and more kids are going to be quad right in the next few years as more and more are going to come around. But the world is like more left. The more world is strategic. The world is like,
Yes.
do this, do this, do this.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all like, I don't know.
I was just gonna say, what does quad
Right?
right mean? Because I don't know what that
Yeah,
means.
they call quad right the aliens, right? The outs. Because they're everything is receptive. It's like
Okay.
they're the quad rights of this world. Like we can, this is the best way my friend puts it. We can watch a movie and like in the moment we take the whole movie in, right? And then you leave the movie and you're like, I have no idea what that movie was about. But if someone was to come up to you and say, did you see that scene? You'd be like, oh my God, yeah, I love that scene. That character like it's like recall memory,
Yeah.
not for us. It's for other people. It's really
Wow.
interesting.
That's
I had a
weird.
quad right in my life, but I wasn't able to appreciate when he was there.
Yeah.
But then I got to know more about the lines and the gates and the channels.
Mm-hmm.
And I really went in depth with everybody I know with their charts. And then I started getting into gene keys, which is like, oh my God, another love of my life right now. I'm in the middle of studying it now.
Yeah.
Um, but just the whole world of HD, and that's human design, is like, I don't know how they got it right. So right. Like every time I've done someone's chart, they're like, and there's simple things in human design that if you know will change your life, like your
Yes.
strategy and authority. If you
Exactly.
know
Yeah.
how you sleep, if you know how to eat, if you know, like all of that's in your chart,
Mm-hmm.
that can make huge impacts. Just with I was talking about having a manifester. She's
Mm-hmm.
7 now. Um, Manifestors don't fall asleep right away. Me and my husband are generators, but she's still in our bed most nights.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to sleep right away. Generators like hit the pillow, they go to sleep. Manifestors take a half hour to an hour to go to sleep. So every night, me and him are like, oh, like, let's go to sleep.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, she can't do it. So now we have to put her upstairs and we go and hang out upstairs, knowing that this is part of her human design.
Hmm.
And I'm telling you, at about 40 minutes like that, she falls asleep. We don't even try anymore. We just hang out with her, knowing that we're not going to go to sleep for a half hour, 45 minutes. And within like 40 minutes, almost like on the dot, she's like, all right. And she conks out. So
Yeah.
interesting.
It's very interesting. And I haven't really, I've gone like as deep as a little bit into like the gates, a little tiny bit into that, but mostly just like this strategy. And I'm a generator too. And
Sacral? Sacral
yes,
generator? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So have you done a bunch of sacral sessions to really get into your
No, I
authority?
haven't done anything like that. So, but some of the things that I've dug into, and I can't even tell you what they are, because like every once in a while I'll like go look at my chart and then I'll just Google it. What does this mean?
Yeah.
You know? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. And then I'm like, okay, well, what does this mean? And then a lot of the chart I can't really read because I don't even understand what it is. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I would have to learn more about it in order to like learn more. So I
Well,
feel like I was.
across the human design world, the first thing you should understand is your strategy and authority, because that's how you
Mhm.
live in the world. So you having a sacral generator, as long if you're a pure generator, probably, I would think,
Mhm.
um, is that you're a yes or no person. You should just
Yeah.
know that when everyone should ask you yes or no questions, but also you need people to ask you yes or no questions when you're not expecting it, like that you easily know the answer to. So like, are you wearing shoes right now? Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
but so that you start to connect with your sacral,
Hmm.
your sacral muscle in a way.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think the best thing to know is the centers. So a human design body graph chart has the centers, like the chakra centers, the energy centers.
Hmm.
But there's 9 instead of 7 because the heart was split into 3. So the heart is actually the G center, the will, and the spleen, kind of, and then all
Wow.
the rest of the centers are the same. And just understanding where you're defined and where you're undefined. So
Yeah.
if you have your body graph in front of you and your center is white, which means it's undefined, or
Hmm.
it's colored in some color, depending on what place you get your chart from, that means it's defined. And anything that's defined in a certain energy center means you have constant access to that. If it's undefined, you don't have access to that. You are like basically not magnifying, magnifying other people's of that, or you're using their energy. It's not yours when you're alone. So
Yeah.
that's something really, because what that teaches you is where you are easily conditioned, where
Hmm.
you have been conditioned by others. So, for example, I have a solar plexus. I'm pointing to here, but I have a solar
Yeah.
plexus that's undefined. That
Yeah.
means, and the solar plexus is about feelings. A lot of it's about feelings. So I don't have access to my own feelings all the time. Now, sometimes when the transits are right, I have access to my feelings, or I'm around other people that have defined solar plexus. I have
Hmm.
access, but I really don't have access to my own feelings most of the time. But when my husband, who has a defined solar plexus, comes home and he's angry, I'm like, I get angry. If I had known this as a teenager, like it's not mine. It's not
Yeah.
mine. And I will magnify that and I'll get mad at whoever's around. I have to stop and be like, okay, is this mine? But I only know to do that because I went through my human design chart and
Yeah.
understanding that I can easily conditioned by other people's emotions. And when
Hmm.
I looked into that, my parents died, right? They could not be sad. One of the last things my dad said to me was, this is your world now. And he said, I can be angry and I can be, but I can't be sad, and he was talking about like my mom dying.
Hmm.
And uh, so I've never been able to feel sadness, right? Anger was always something. I was conditioned by always feeling my parents' sadness, but
Hmm.
never expressing it. So what did I do? I never got angry. I cried my eyes out my whole life. And I never stood up for myself. I never got angry. I never spoke it out because I was like conditioned by that because I could feel it,
Yeah.
but they weren't expressing it. So it's cool that like the centers can kind of show you where your conditioning in life is.
Yeah.
And of course, when you start to work with the human design, you're deconditioning. That's their word, right? It
Yeah.
takes like 7 years. Oh, it's so much work.
Well, it's a lot. Yeah. It's like you could
Yeah.
just you could just keep going. I feel like forever. Like you could never learn it all. That's what it feels like to me. But it's so interesting. It's very fun to like dive into it every once in a while. So I absolutely love it. So that's really so
Mm.
so I could see how when someone comes to you, like when you work with people, um, is it a certain type of person? Are they looking to do certain things? Like what do you gravitate towards a lot of times, the type of people?
I find a lot of women
Mhm.
in midlife
Yeah.
where you're getting a lot of transitions, all, they're becoming caretakers. So many people have lost their parents recently
Mhm.
that I've worked with, or they are in a career change, or their kids are going off to college and they're like, what do I
Yeah.
do with my life? Like, I
Yeah.
don't, or they feel that like there's something more, but
Mhm.
they just don't know where to start sometimes. Um, so when I work with them, and I'm very intuitive in sessions, so sometimes the session ends up being a lot more human design than Akashic Records, or running in, or giving, or working with things that they can do on a daily basis to begin to build up to the other parts of the sessions.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
That's real. I could see that. I could see that being all these modalities or all these things being super helpful for that time period in your life. I work with a lot of women at that same age group. And so I feel like uh, all those things that you just said happen to everybody. It's like there's so many transitions that are happening kind of like almost feels like all at the same time. And so it becomes overwhelming. And I feel like a lot of women get like really lost in that feeling and they constantly say, I don't have a purpose or something like that.
yeah, and you know what? It's not fucking easy to be a Gen X woman right now.
No,
It's not. We
it's
are we
not.
are like we are treading new paths because the women before us were not the caretakers. We did not. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me as a Gen X woman, I've lost over 20 friends who were
Hmm.
younger than 50. I mean,
Hmm.
how did I don't my parents didn't lose anybody unless they were in a war,
Hmm.
or right, or had like a
Yeah.
massive tragedy. I've lost so many people, and then on top of it, I'm watching all of my friends lose very similar levels of
Hmm.
stuff, like the grief that we're dealing with, and the way that kids are parented now, and like college prices, and I mean there's so much that I,
It's so much.
as a
Yeah.
Gen X woman, how do we do it, right? You have to have some kind of solid core.
Hmm. Yeah,
You gotta
you
move
really
it.
do. You have to really I think you really have to know yourself. You have to really tune into your intuition, connect with that, and really be able to like trust yourself. And I think a lot of women don't have that. And that was something that I needed to learn how to do as I was coming like out of when I got divorced, like moving in through my 40s, like
Yeah.
just learning to trust myself again and really like uh, you know, it's we all have intuition, but I was completely disconnected with that because the relationship I was in was very abusive. And so like I had to learn to like trust myself again and reconnect with myself. And I spent years doing that. And like still to this day, I feel like it's just like a process, kind of like eating well and working out. Like you just have to keep doing this I don't like to call it work. I really don't want to call it work because I love doing it. But
Observation or
like it can get deeper and deeper and it's just a continuous like lifestyle change more than anything else. It's not something you do and then it's done and then everything's okay. It's something that's like continuous.
it's interesting because I as well had many. I mean, I was so unhealthy growing up. I was in I was like 15 dating a 21-year-old at one point, and super like abusive, and I got in and out of all kinds of stuff. So I had all of that, and I didn't even start. I mean, I always had things I worked on. I used to dance the five rhythms with Gabrielle Roth, and I had things that kept me balanced, that if I
Hmm.
didn't have, I probably would have been in a really bad situation.
Hmm.
But it took me years to be able to, okay, just really look at myself and forget about trust, but just see that I was beautiful. Like, forget about trust. Like, the trust is like, I had to have babies before that, I think. I think I had to feel that my body could birth something
Hmm.
for me to go there. It was a really rough experience. But recently, when I was getting trained with Yoga Nidra, like a few years ago, um, I did a Sankalpa. A Sankalpa is like the heart's intention. It's
Hmm.
beginning of like a Yoga Nidra. And I used my Sankalpa on trust, and I did a 108-day mala bead journey. And I did it
Wow.
like every day. I'm telling you, by the end of that journey, like a ton of things had opened up for me. And I wouldn't say that I trusted myself fully or anything, but
Hmm.
I was feeling like the connection
Hmm.
to myself, right? And I was beginning to feel like the seeds of that being planted. So those are always fun to go on. If you feel like an adventure and like get some Wallabies and do like 108 day, it's an adventure, but it's an interesting one that doesn't take a super amount of time.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds like a challenge almost, I think.
Yeah.
So, how can everybody get connected with you? Where do you hang out and where can they find you?
Yeah, well, I have a website. It's jocelynbates.net. And
Okay.
then I also have like an offer on there where I have a balance your nervous system cheat sheet. Because
Okay.
like I said, I feel like you can't go anywhere unless you can like at least breathe without anxiety. And so it's
Yes.
just some things like, like even just things you could do when you're waiting in traffic and you're like, ah,
Yeah.
simple things like the car next to you won't even know you're doing it, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it's just a simple cheats. I think there's like 10 or 11 simple things you can do on it. So I have that on my website. I am on Insight Timer. It's the same name, Jocelyn Bates. And I'm
Mhm.
on Instagram. And
Okay.
Instagram, I'm Soul Sessions by Jocelyn.
Okay.
So, but
I
yeah,
just
everything is up on my website. And
Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's probably the best place to find all of this
yeah.
information. So we'll put that link in the show notes so that people can connect with you. It's been quite a journey today. I
Wow, we
really
talked a
enjoyed
lot.
this. So much fun. I love this stuff. I love it. I love all of it. So I want to thank you again for sharing your wisdom and being on the podcast. I had like a great time talking to you. So thanks for being on.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was so fun. I love it.
Yeah.